Hello.
So today, the topic of the discussion is how to pass Azure technical interview. So I think this workshop will be very beneficial to everyone, but my focus is more on C sharp developers. My focus is on developers who have some experience or very little experience to Azure. So how I have divided this workshop. First, I'll start with some basic questions, and it's a more a discussion. Karan, if you want to chip in, feel free to anytime.
Mhm.
So initially we'll start with some basic questions. Afterwards, we'll go into some hands-on exercises. We'll build some applications. We'll show concepts by doing hands-on C sharp exercises. So if you have very little experience, you're gonna get benefited a lot. So if you are watching this video online, put in a comment, put in the chat what kind of questions you would like to cover. If we have time, we'll take those questions. Otherwise, we'll have another workshop where we part two, where we may cover some topics again, or we'll take some questions which we cannot cover today. So, what first question? Nobody has asked me what is Azure. So, sometime like I crib if some I have worked on something for years, and somebody asks me why what is C sharp? Like, okay, what kind of question is that? But like I think is this is a Azure. It's a opportunity for you to demonstrate your knowledge of cloud computing. So how I would answer is Azure is a cloud offering by Microsoft where it offers IT computing services over the internet. For example, virtual machines, storage, databases, network. So you can have all these resources mm, hosted by Microsoft instead of you hosting on premises. So that would be my first definition of Azure. So anybody, if anybody wants to comment, feel free to add your comments. So second question could be, okay, what are the benefit of Azure cloud computing? Why
Mhm.
you are hosting your applications? Why you are getting, why you are getting all the servers on Microsoft? What are the benefits? The first benefit I would say, I would quote high availability and high scalability. This is example is given a lot by Microsoft themselves. They give example, okay, there is a World Cup football going on in USA. So at that time, everybody is ordering pizza. Generally, let's say 1 million people are ordering pizza. That day, maybe 20 million or 100 million, I'm just keep creating a number, are ordering pizza. So how can you scale your application for particular day? So either you have to buy a lot of hardware, and upfront you have to buy hardware and design your application, have that kind of hardware that you can scale your application at that level. Or you can go with the cloud where you pay per consumption. If your consumption is low, you pay for that low consumption. And on those big days, you can increase the number of servers. You can increase your scalability. At this time, you can talk about scalability is of two types, vertical scalability and horizontal scalability. In horizontal scalability, you just increase the memory and CPU of a server. Whereas in vertical stable scalability, you increase the number of computers which are doing the processing. The benefit of a cloud is that you are paying for consumption. You can use consumption model, and you don't have to pay for the extra hardware. And of course, they are highly available application. It depends upon the SLA you sign up with Microsoft. So they have a very nice example of how huge difference is between 99.9 and 99.99 availability. So reliability, since in cloud, they can deploy application servers across different geographical locations. So since they can deploy applications among different geographical locations, so there is a high reliability. The servers they can deploy in India, in USA, and there's some big disruption, let's say in USA, the servers in India will be still available, and that is a big benefit of Azure cloud computing. The third, I will say, security and governance in the cloud. Since if you are going for a service model where you are using servers given by Microsoft, so you don't have to deploy the latest security patches operating system on on the server. Uh, so Microsoft or whatever the cloud partner you have signed up with will take care of those services. So Karan, you want to add anything? What do you think like biggest benefits?
I think the one big benefit is when you know that you don't have like you always have a backup of you have more reliability, and that you almost are guaranteed 99% of the times that uptime will be there and no issues scaling the process, as you told, like if it's 1,000 pizzas, million pizzas, it's elastic, which these two I think are one biggest benefits. So we can I feel, yeah.
Awesome. Next question is, what are the different cloud models? So there are, I would describe three main cloud models. One is a private cloud model. In private cloud model, you set up cloud model in your private on premises. In public, you use the cloud environment by Microsoft over the internet. In hybrid, you will use both private and public. That way, you can decide what are the resources. There are cases where I've seen databases they host in private private environment, where other application they are hosting in public environment. So you can make the most of those kind of those kind of models. So what are the different types of storage areas in Azure, Microsoft Azure? So blob is a type of storage when you need to store some unstructured data or big files. You can use blob. Then of course files. You can store data in files. Queues. You can store the data in queues. Also, you can store the data in the tables. We will be discussing queues later afterwards. And blob, you may get some questions. So this is an interesting question. Now we will do an exercise. They may ask you, how did you deploy your applications? You can deploy your application using web apps where you don't use any container at all. But the biggest benefit of deploying application is when you use container. So what is container? So understanding container is easy if you compare container versus virtual machines. Suppose you want to have multiple multiple instances of your application. Old way of doing was that you will create multiple virtual machines. The problem with virtual machine is you need to have operating system on each virtual machine. Whereas same thing you can do using containers. You can deploy your application in the containers. In containers, you don't have to deploy the operating system. They use the operating system of the host machine. So they are very, very lightweight, where a virtual machine size can go anywhere from 3 GB to 4 GB. The size of containers is generally in couple of MBs, starting from 20 or 20 onwards. So they are very, very lightweight. So Microsoft Azure offers Azure Container Instance. In this is very lightweight. If you need to have one application doing every work, so you can use this. Let me talk about before you talk about container apps. Let me talk about Azure Kubernetes services. So Kubernetes services comes into picture when you're using a lot of containers. So you need some services, some orchestration engine, which will make sure that all the containers are up and running. If some container has died, so it is the job of orchestrator to make sure that container is taken out of the active nodes, and it brings back another container alive. So it will make sure that n number of containers are always live. So Azure Container App is you don't it take care of the orchestration engine for you. You don't have to worry about the Kubernetes services. You can just deploy your container application. So let's give an example. So I have Docker on my machine. Karan, can you see Docker? Let me start Visual Studio. Okay. So I'll create a new application to demonstrate how easy it is to create a container application and deploy it on Azure. So before I do that, let me, okay, first let me create the application. I will just call it Web Application 7.
Mhm.
So we'll be using .NET 8.0, and we will deploy this application in Docker, and Docker operating system is going to be Linux. So we'll see how Visual Studio make it easy for us.
So because Docker is a type of container, right?
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
So Karan, you see, it created a Docker file. So
Hmm.
this Docker file will make sure that it creates all the dependencies, application, create a image and deploy inside a image. So everything is done for me. So before I run, let me, so the people who are new to Azure. So everything Azure you have to do is you have to create a resource group. So one question may be asked you why you need a resource group. So resource group is way of organizing your resources. Generally in my work environment, I will have a resource group for dev, resource group resource group for QA and production. So resource group could be based on the application or department where you're working. So let me create a resource group for our demo. So Azure, I'll call it demo 12, 15 to 24. Uh, Instead of dev, I'll call it QA. So because I have already a resource group called dev, so let me call it QA. So resource group is created. So next, I have created this application locally. It has very simple application. It has one view which just says, welcome, learn about building web apps with app.net. Let me run it locally. So it is running. It it will be running inside the Docker. So is it taking some time? Okay. So this is my application. So now I'm going to deploy on Azure. So if you are working on the huge project, you will have some pipelines. What if you're working as an individual? The chances are you're publishing your self application on the Azure. So let me show you how you can. This is a application I'm developing on my local machine. How do I deploy this application on Azure? So I'm going to click publish. I deploy this application on Azure. Azure Container Apps Linux. Subscription. So let me click create new container app, and resource group will select here our QA one, demo 1215 QA, and where it is creating this application, creating, okay. Let's go ahead and create our container app inside the Azure. So Visual Studio is doing, I have just created the resource group. It's going to create a container app for me. Okay. So next is registry. We have to create a registry where our Docker image will be posted, and container app will be using this registry to pull the image to its application. So let's go ahead and create the registry. So right now the right resource group is in selected. Is creating the container registry on Azure for me. So that created the profile for me. So it's just saying container app needs extra configuration. Visual Studio need to run under admin. So I'll say yes. So let me go ahead and publish this. So now I have created the container app, container registry, and now it's building the image, and it's going to push the image to the container registry where container app is going to pull and show the application. While it's publishing, Karan, most of the time, I have heard other people being asked these questions, basic question Azure. Generally, most of the interviewers ask me, tell me what you have done on Azure, how long you have been working. And I think that is the time for you to tell what kind of work you are doing.
Yeah.
What are the things, what are the Azure resources, different resources you are using. That is, you need to talk about your architecture. If I have worked on container apps, SQL Server is hosted on a VMs and they are hosted on a as a database is we are using PostgreSQL and they are hosted on virtual machines. We have pipelines where we are using TeamCity and TeamCity to build these images and push it to the server. So also they may ask you where you are storing your connection string. So they are looking for they may ask about the security, what kind of security your application has. So that's the opportunity when you talk about application architecture, and a lot of time they're going to ask the questions in depth about that.
Okay.
So Karan, like any interesting general Azure questions you can think of?
No, I think generally there's another question like how are you migrating your on-prem to Azure? What is the step-by-step process?
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean,
I think
everybody has a
that's where
different approach.
they want lift and shift and what are the challenging
Yeah.
challenges you are
What are the
facing.
challenges you faced while migrating? I think yeah, that's a question. Yeah. And I feel the answer is different for everybody.
Everybody.
So sometimes
Actually,
it,
if somebody asks that question, to me it tells what is the maturity of that organization, right? In Azure.
right,
Uh, if somebody asks me what are the challenges you are facing migrating, to me, that company has just started migrating to Azure. They don't
right,
have much experience.
yeah, 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 definitely. And also the fact is they also want to know your expertise that have you done it multiple times or have you like what are the possible scenarios you can think of? If even if you haven't come across any issues, what are the possible issues you can come across? I think it's always
That is very nice question and nice Karan. Like maybe well, next next meeting will cover those kind of open-ended questions.
right,
Somebody asked me how when you deploy an application on Azure, how will you will make sure this is highly scalable? I think that's opportunity to read the whole Azure manual to the interviewer.
right. Mhm, mhm. Yeah.
Like one guy asked me, he asked me like I was going for architect and lead kind of role. He asked me, have you deployed Kubernetes? Okay, that is interesting question. Means I didn't expect. Okay, have you deployed the Kubernetes? But whereas deploying Kubernetes is difficult, little difficult, little difficult if you are doing deploying on premises. I think Azure and Azure they give you more flexible way of deploying. And I'm seeing a lot of some companies are going away from Kubernetes and some companies are adopting Kubernetes. And what I
Mhm.
hear from them is the people who are going away from Kubernetes is too complex, too much complexity you have to handle. And the people who are joining Kubernetes, they say, "Oh my God, this gives you more reliability. You
Yeah,
can say what are the resources you are using. You can force the resources so your billing is not gone out of the roof.
Yeah.
See,
Okay.
that's an current, like a lot of people face on consumption based. 1 month they get a bill of 200K, and 1 month they get 100K bill. So like 10K bill, and 1 month 200K bill. So it
Okay.
fluctuates so much.
Right. Yeah. That's good. Good, good to
So
know.
let it run. Maybe we can go to another question and come back to it. It's taking some time to push this image to the web server. So let's go to this question. Uh, Azure App Services. What kind of applications you can deploy in Azure App Service? As I said before, like Azure App Service is the simplest way you can deploy your application on Azure without worrying about containers. And if you have a simple requirement which you don't have to worry about the container apps, you can just use Azure App Services,
Services.
and you can deploy web apps, API applications, web jobs, and mobile apps on Azure App Services on those one.
Mhm.
So I have heard this question, some people being asked, what is difference between software as a service, platform as a service, and infrastructure as a services? So let's go quickly into this one. So it's a nice diagram by Microsoft. If you think about on-premises, you are responsible for everything. So it's a nice one. Uh, there's a shared responsibility between. Okay, so before I go further, I can see my application has been deployed. So let's go back. So my application has been deployed. So let's check our application. So we have deployed our container app. So quick way is to filter based on container apps. The QA one. So this is our app. And we can quickly browse using the URL. So this is our URL. You can see it's deployed on Azure. And we do see welcome our website. So here is this is our container app, and here is our containers. Uh, so here it's telling you what is the registry name, what is the image we are using, environment variables. These are there could be your connection string, all the parameters which your application is using. So let's go back to know our software as a service. So on premises, you are responsible for your hardware, your operating system, your network, for your Active Directory services, account, all the PCs, information. Infrastructure as a service is, as Karan said, a lot of time, but people say, how you going to migrate to Azure? So this is the easiest way of shifting to cloud. You are just using infrastructure services to third party cloud provider, whereas you are responsible for all the applications, all the users access, what kind of access they would have. When you go for platform as a service, you have outsourced all your servers, databases, operating system, whereas you have a shared responsibility for Active Directory services, network controls, and applications. Whereas when you use software as a service, you have outsourced everything: infrastructure, operating system, applications, uh, but there's a shared responsibility. You are giving mobile and computers to your employees. You are maintaining their accounts. So in software as a service, it could be example of Office 365 or email. So where you are only responsible for maintaining accounts. So another hard question is, what are functions? So like in container app we created. So we have to worry about everything. We have to worry about operating system, what it's going to use. So like in functions, if you want outsource everything to Microsoft, you want to write just your code and deploy it on Azure. So you can use Azure function. So we'll write our function so that you understand more what is a function. So let's go and create our function from our application. So let's new project, Azure function. So these are mm, project name, location, that's fine. We will be creating a .NET 8.0. This trigger, we will be creating a HTTP trigger. And let's enable the Docker. So let me create my first function. So I have created the function. Let me run it locally first.
Mm.
That is interesting error. I have not seen that before. Okay, it's running now. Okay, I see output. It's loading in the container, running it. Okay, so it's all done locally. This is how I will test locally. Let me open a browser. So this is how I execute my function. This is a HTTP trigger. So from the URL, this Azure function is getting triggered. So let's go ahead and deploy it on Azure. Azure function. Let's create a Windows based. Create a new. We'll create a new instance, and we'll use our QS. source group, which is good. Plan type is consumption. Okay, let me go ahead and create it. So we are creating our Azure function, deploying it. I should have changed from Australia Central to US Central. Current lot of time you can really see the difference, performance difference if you select a server which is in your geographical location versus you use in some other location.
Hmm. What do you say, Vikas?
I said I should have used. I should have deployed in the same geographical location. I deployed in Australia, and you can see the performance difference uh, as compared to deploying it in central US, some server.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, I have created the profile. Let me publish it. I am publishing my Azure function to Azure. Karan, are you surprised about the hype behind function? Maybe it's so easy. That's why people, everybody is building.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't used it as much, but I feel
Mhm.
like people are they being utilized as much as they are being advertised? That's my question regarding Azure Functions. That's
There's too much hype, right? Like,
yeah, I think so.
While it's publishing, let me go to the next one. Once it finish, I'll come back to here. Okay, so it heard me. So by the time I said, okay, go to next question, it almost finished. Waiting for function app to be ready. Function app is ready. Let's go ahead and see our function app now. Um, all resources and get our function app, apply. So this is our QA function app. So this is our function which has been deployed into this app group. So how we can test our function is, let's get of the URL of our function. Uh, and key, and let now test our function. So here our function is deployed on the Azure and it's a HTTP based trigger. So it gave, once I gave the HTTP trigger, hit the enter, it's giving me the message, welcome to Azure function. So this is how we write the Azure function. So Azure function is, you don't want to worry about operating system, all those details. You just want to write your function. It's a could be based on some message in the service bus or some file or HTTP trigger. We'll go into more details a little bit later. And so let's go to the next question. What is Azure Service Bus? So another must know questions for C# developers. What is Azure Service Bus? Azure Service Bus is nothing but a queue where applications can send messages to the queue, and there's another application which can read the message from the queue and do something. So why we need queues when we have databases? So when the, the queues are event based. If there's some interesting event has happened, and there's some interesting event has happened, and we want to do some processing. It would be inefficient to do a database pooling because you will be hitting database every 5 minutes, and database performance can go down. Whereas in service queue, it publishes the message to a application who's listening. That's the example of asynchronous processing. It's very good use of your resources. So we will now build an application on Azure Service Bus. Will write a console application which will write a message into Azure Service Bus, and we will write a function which will get triggered whenever there's a message in the Azure Service Bus. So let's go ahead and first create our Azure Service Bus on Azure. Um, and let's create our Azure Service Bus. So here's our service bus. Let me create it. We will use our QA resource group. Let me give it name demo 12, 15, 24 QA 2. Pricing tier will use the basic one. And advanced, we don't care at this point. Net is public access. We don't need this. Let's go ahead and create our service bus. First, creating our service bus. So our service bus is created. So here is our service bus. How it works is you need to have queues. Let's create a queue. I'll call it because queue. So here's the Vikas queue. We will create an application. Let me kill this. So Visual Studio. We'll create a console application which will write message in this queue. Console application. So we have created a console application. Now, how we are going to write a message in Azure Service Bus? This is a question they can ask. The answer is you have to add the right NuGet package. Let me add the NuGet package. So we need the Service Bus package. So this is the package we need to talk to Azure Service Bus. So I have the code. Let me get the code. Apply. Okay. So here's the code. I have to give the connection string to the service bus and the queue name, and it will write a message. Let me say, hello, Vikas. This is a test message. Let me get the connection string for our service bus. So this is our service bus. Le- How you get the connection string is you go to this shared access policy, you click the root message shared access policy, and this is the connection string you get, primary connection string. So let me copy this this connection string, and the queue name I remember because queue. I'll put a breakpoint and run the application. Okay, let me step through. Yeah, it successfully sent the message. Let's see. Let me refresh. So you can see I have sent one message to the queue. Now we'll write a function which will get triggered whenever there is a message in this queue. Let me start a new Visual Studio. Create a new project. Azure function. So this time instead of HTTP trigger, I want service bus queue trigger. So here we have to give the connection string. Let me copy the connection string back. We go to shared access policies, root access, and copy the connection string. And queue name I remember is Vikas queue. Oh, great. So here is our trigger. It created a trigger. One interesting thing is like it has created a code, but it doesn't like the connection string here. So this should go into localhost. Is this correct? Let me check once more. Yeah. Let me run this. So this function should read the message from the service bus. Okay, so it got the first message. Hello, because this is a text message. So it started reading the messages. Let me do one thing. Let me change the message. They say, hello, Ram, this text message. Let me send this. So you can see, hello, Ram, this is the text message. This is the reading. So we have shown how you can use Azure Service Bus to send message and read message. This is very popular questions in the interview. Another thing I want to, very popular question, how you do the logging. Let me quickly see whether this function has been created. Let me deploy this function on, let me deploy this function. Mr. Australia, let me create you something East USA. Now I want to give you example how we can log information, see log using application insights. That's an interesting, and underneath when we create function app, it's creating app service underneath. So friends, okay, created. Let me go ahead and publish it. Created the application insights for this one. That's good. Let me go ahead and deploy it. It's publishing. So today we covered some basic of Azure. what is Azure, what are different applications, how we can deploy different engine container applications. We did a C sharp demonstration of how we can create a container app in Azure, how we can deploy. Then we wrote a function, how we can deploy function, and also Azure Service Bus, how you write message to your Service Bus. And today, now I'm trying to show the logging functionality. So app is ready. Microsoft Application Insights install. Let me select our Azure function. This is the application insights it's using. So here we can see one sample view all. And here we can see all the logging. Uh, C sharp HTTP function processed a. This is the HTTP trigger system. So this is how we can see the logging. Let me see the other one. This is how you can see the log. Another way of seeing the log is you can go to the logs. You can see all the traces and you can see uh, it's doing all the logging. When you can see all the logging messages. So that concludes our workshop for today. Uh, Karen, any thoughts before we leave?
Yeah, yeah, thanks, Vikas, for presenting all this. Like, it's so much value for me, and I think everybody who will watch it. It's in a such a easy way of going from containers, Kubernetes, Azure services, functions, and deploying all the way. You did it in a easy manner, and then I think that's just very. Sometimes it's not easy to find information. I think this is very valuable in so that you have everything covered very in a easy to understand manner. Yeah.
Thank you, Karan. Yeah, good night. See you soon.
All right. See you.